You know, looking back on it, I called Baldur's Gate 3 my game of the year for 2023 really early on into the game, and that's because the introduction and even the first 20 to 30 hours of the game was so amazingly composed and well constructed and just fun to me that I knew I was going to enjoy the game even more so later on, and that has come to pass. I have finished Act 1 pretty much for Baldur's Gate 3. I've done pretty much everything that I realistically can do or at least find in my playthrough. I'm sure I missed a few things, but I'm pretty much done with Act 1. There's like one little thing in the Underdark that I could do. I think I can save it for Act 2, but I'm pretty much ready to move on to Act 2, so I want to take a little bit of time today to talk about my overall review of Act 1 for Baldur's Gate 3, because if I look on my Steam information right now, I have over 50 hours into this. Granted, about 2 of them is on a second character that I did for a video a while back, and maybe I have an hour or 2 of just me being AFK. I don't think it's that much though. But pretty much I have about 50-ish hours just in Act 1. There's 3 acts in this game, and Act 1 took me longer than most other games out there. And I enjoy it from start to finish, and I want to talk about why Act 1 is honestly, in my opinion, one of the best introductory experiences for a game that I've ever played. And for this to work, we have to understand the beginnings. The opening cutscene is indulgent with how cool and fantasy it feels, intermixing the demon, is it demons or devils? I'm still learning that difference for D&D because I'm new to it. I think it's demons, though, at the beginning, with the mind flayers and the cities and all that, all those cool features and aesthetics clashing with one another. Getting the mind flayer parasite inserted into your eye being such a visceral image, and then you have this entire introductory tutorial on the mind flayer ship as it's going through hell. And it works so well because one of the biggest pitfalls so many of these long-form RPGs have is that the introduction is really slow and drags on as it has to slowly introduce all of these concepts to you, the player, because there's just so much in the game later on. But in Baldur's Gate 3, what did they do? Well, they focus in on the important things of the game and the biggest strengths of the game, in my opinion. The combat and the characters, both of which are done immaculately well. Also the player choice, that's a big one. You have essentially the holy trinity of Baldur's Gate 3 in my opinion. Combat, player choice, and the characters. All are well constructed, well thought out, and executed, and this tutorial Mind Flayer ship section of Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3 is an incredible way to dip your feet into the world of D&D, dip your feet into the world of Baldur's Gate, and to introduce you to concepts that you'll run with later on in the game as you get to the proper open world section. They drop you on a beach and they let go of your hand, and it's so refreshing how they've done this, to where you can go gather the party members if you so choose to at whatever pace or order or time you want to do it. You can just stumble through the woods to find Astarion, talk to some jabroni in the Druid Grove to pick up Will, and then hear whispers about a character called Karlach, go out and find her. It's well constructed, because it feels like an adventure at every point and turn. It doesn't feel like a linear experience for you to experience the developer's vision and all that. It feels like you were dropped into the world and you are allowed to make your own adventure. And based on the consequences of the world itself, the other characters, but also your own, that all shapes your own personal little journey. What character you picked influences your dialogue options and can give you completely different scenarios that can happen alongside the bevy of choices at your disposal. Whether you're in combat or out of combat or preparing for combat, it's incredible how this is all constructed and just how many different branching paths you have at your disposal. Okay, I'm a bit of an idiot. My overall playthrough of Baldur's Gate 3 for Act 1 is probably closer to 45, maybe 43 hours. I forgot I'm also doing a co-op playthrough with a buddy of mine, but we haven't even gotten out of Act 1 there yet. And again, comparing and contrasting the playthrough I'm doing for the channel by myself with my co-op playthrough, we didn't get Karlach in the co-op playthrough, because we had the Tieflings kill all the druids. So we didn't get Karlach. The game is not afraid to have consequence, and I think Act 1, which is trying to teach you about how this game is going to work and how it's going to operate and the type of choices and the types of player choices you have at your disposal, what they are and how they operate. Act 1 does this so well by giving you these incredible little scenarios that you can just stumble upon because of your wanderlust or because you heard a rumor or whatever, and you stumble upon these scenarios, you think on your feet, and you act accordingly upon what you want, what you think, and what you want to do. For instance, in Act 1, I found my way to the Underdark because I killed out an encampment of Zentarum. Then I found an entrance to the Underdark because I won a perception check to realize that a wall was a fake wall and there was an elevator down to the Underdark. I told my buddy about that, and he said, yeah, that's cool, but I found a completely different entrance to the Underdark when you fight a giant spider. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a second entrance? He's like, yeah, I'll show you. So in our co-op playthrough, we go to fight the spider. We kill it with fall damage because it lands on a web over the giant hole going into the Underdark. We burn the web so it falls all the way to the Underdark. We go down there and loot its corpse. Do you see what I'm talking about when it comes to player choice? When it comes to this sense of adventure? The reason this game is still living on and is still as popular as it is because word of mouth for this game is so good. It is perfect water cooler talk. Because there's so many different paths, so many different ways to tackle each and every little scenario in this game that you just end up, whenever you're talking to a friend or someone about any section, chances are you did it differently to someone else. And then you tell them about how you did it, they tell you about how they did it, and you become curious. Maybe you start a second character to see what it's all about. Like how there may be unique dialogue with Shadowheart if you roll a cleric that goes for the Path of Saloon, or whatever her name is, who's the opposing goddess to, well, Shadowheart's god that she follows. The game is all about consequence, and is not afraid of letting your consequences lay. Whether they be positive or negative, they allow you to form your own story. They don't feel the need to give you a safety net, to feel the need to force you down any one path. The story evolves because not only of the world's actions, but also yourself. And it's so hard to strike a proper balance for this, because a lot of the times, player agency can feel like an illusion, to where certain choices just feel like they're there for fluff and don't really have any permanence or real impact. That is not the case in Baldur's Gate. Every time I go into a scenario, a fight, an encounter, or any line of dialogue, I feel like I have a lot of control as to how that progresses, because it allows me to play the character the way I want to play that character, whether that be in character select or even throughout the game. And for a game like Baldur's Gate 3, that's part of the fun, that's part of the beauty, and that's part of the everlasting appeal of Dungeons & Dragons, going on this grand journey where Larian takes the form of the DM, but it's not just the DM's story, it's your own, and how you progress it and how you evolve that story. Whether through your own personal blunders, the roll of the dice, your quick-wittedness, your forethought, whether or not you're trying to concoct some grand scheme or just going on whim. The game allows you to tackle it and play and plan around what you want to do. And Act 1 does such a good job of that by providing these little mini scenarios throughout the world, like with Aunt Ethel, the Goblin Camp, the Druid Grove, Karlach and the Paladins. All the scenarios when you long rest with your group, the Ruined Church, the Catacombs, the Zentarum Encampment. I think one of the reasons I liked Act 1 so much is because it kind of feels like a TV show or an anime, and the way that it's separated into different arcs. You have this overarching plot about you trying to find a healer to get those parasites out of your brain. So you end up going all around the map, trying your best, and going to different situations in these little, mini arcs, trying to find a healer or just following up on whatever you happen to find there. And then slowly over the course of time and through these different events, you unravel the character arcs for each of these characters. You're not following and continuing any one overarching narrative all the time. You're branching out. Oh, you found a bounty hunter that's going after Astarion. Let's focus in on his character. Learn a bit more about him. Oh, you found this statue. Let's focus in on Shadowheart. What about Karlach? What about Will? What about Gale? All the while you're going to these different locations and building up the world, fleshing it out, and also by the nature of who is in your party, you get a unique experience for these situations depending upon if the character's in your party or not. Because the game doesn't really punish you if you don't have the character. It's not like you stroll up to the vampire hunter and it says, you need a Astarion in your party, who do you want to bench? No, you can tackle that scene in different ways if Astarion's not in your party or not. The game doesn't view it as a requirement where it's just like, oh, we really want you to have Astarion here to see the difference in dialogue or perspective or whatever. Or because we have a really funny moment with Astarion trying to hide himself or whatever. No, it's a story that's happening and unraveling organically in front of you. Allow the player to experience it at their own pace. And the game does that. And it does it so well. And that's what Act 1 does so well on the whole. It gives you these little mini plot lines with a beginning, middle, and an end. So you feel like you're always getting a little bit of a sense of finality, as if you're closing out on these little storylines, but chances are they lead into something down the line, or they connect to one of your party members, so you gain additional development and fleshing out for that character to make you more invested in the overarching plot as well, which progresses by long nights or long rests as well. Everything largely feels interconnected, and that is so hard to do and hard to do so effectively, to where it doesn't feel disconnected or disjointed or just like filler. And if you don't want to pursue a questline, you don't have to. If you want to really early on, I could have just gone to Act 2. I could have gone through the mountain pass without even doing the Goblin encampment or wrapping up the Druid Grove situation. I could just do that. That would have been my choice. I chose to hang back and pursue those storylines, because to me that was more compelling and engaging and what I wanted to do. And the only fiction that the game threw up was saying, hey, if you go beyond the mountains, this will be a major point of progress for you. Are you sure you're done here? That was it. I could continue, or I could go back. And I elected to go back. Because I was having so much fun in Act 1, I wanted to do pretty much everything. And to me, that is what an introductory experience is supposed to do, and is what it's meant to do. Introduce you to the styles of quest and combat that the game is going to give you. And it gives you these little microcosm, these little examples of the game on the whole, for you to get a feeling of how the game is going to operate on a grander scale. Each of these little situations and these little mini arcs could have their own different endings or different twists in different plot lines and threads and ways you can go about doing it based on your own creativity and how much you've explored so far or know about so far, or just your imagination. For instance, there was a quest line where I had to rescue a girl who was in the middle of a wooden cage that was lit on fire over a giant pit, and I had to fight a boss while trying to save her. I could try and heal her, I could try and rush down the boss to kill the boss before she dies and before the fire destroys the cage and she falls to her death, or do what I did, have Shadowheart create water on the cage to knock out the fire. So I don't even have to worry about that, I can just focus on the boss. The game didn't prompt me to do that. I just utilized the tools at my disposal that the game gave me and that the game let me choose to have. And I was rewarded for that prior preparation, but also my thought processes and my imagination. That feels good, and it bolsters this sense of adventure when I feel like, oh yes, this behaves logically. I feel rewarded for thinking outside of the box, and when I feel rewarded for doing that on a consistent basis, it's going to make me feel incentivized to think that way going into the future, and not to just think that every line of dialogue or situation has an illusion of player choice. There's no illusion here. And these little mini arcs that they give you in Act 1 do such a good job of constantly reinforcing those notions. And I've been really enjoying the combat as well. I never played D&D before. I've watched a few sessions before, like back in the day I watched Total Biscuit do a Warhammer 40k D&D session. May not have been technically D&D, but you know what I mean. It was a type of game, right? And it was cool, but I didn't really understand the rule set all that much. I just knew it was a bunch of rolling dice. Then I got my hands on this game and I played it, and with my only prior actual experience being playing Divinity Original Sin 1 for like an hour or two, I became so engrossed in the gameplay here. I love mixing and matching my party members to find various synergies. I love the fact that I'm a fighter and Karlach is a barbarian, so a lot of the times it ends up with me and Karlach just wailing on some jabroni, while Shadowheart tries to not miss, or heal us and provide support. I made Astarion into a mage rogue, pretty much, so he can cast spells or be, you know, a rogue. So I have a decent, like, mix of everything, of healing, spells, and melee. I have various synergies I can invoke with that. I have a bunch of cool spells on Shadowheart, and over the course of my time leveling up my characters, I got to level 5, by the way, in Act 1, I gained more and more utility and more tools in my tool belt that I can utilize in combat or out of combat. I went from having low charisma to doing a redo on my build to having decent charisma, but because I'm a fighter, I get bonuses to, like, persuasion and intimidation. Because that is what I wanted. The game lets me change that kind of stuff. At no point does it ever really feel like the game is trying to hold my hand. And the game has an amazing balance between letting me try out different things, but also having there to be consequences for my choices. And I love that. I didn't like having Shadowheart as a trickster cleric. I respected a Tempest, because I want to do a playthrough for my first one, where I kind of like go in for the whole like Eldritch horror thing, lean into all the Mind Flayer stuff that I possibly can, and I thought having Tempest Shadowheart would be a good like match with that. Kind of like a Bloodborne playthrough, if that makes sense. We'll see how that progresses in Act 2 and 3, but I also didn't realize or think that I would like Karlach as a character this much. It's just a nice feeling to have a game that feels this liberating. And I feel that Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be one of those games that stands the test of time. It had such an explosive launch, won so many awards, justifiably so in my opinion, and I'm so excited to see what the game has for the rest of it, because I'm already thinking about other playthroughs that I want to do. I want to do like 2 for Dark Urge. I just need more time in the day. But like, what can I say? Baldur's Gate Act 1, for so many reasons, works as an introductory experience to Baldur's Gate 3 because it is composed of a bunch of different microcosms that represent the overarching gameplay design philosophies on the whole. And they all feed into each other and feed into a character storyline, or world building and development, or fleshing out the world, or whatever. You never feel like you're too far away from some kind of big character development or another situation that can lead you on to a long quest chain where your actions have permanence and importance. And that's a great feeling to have. The world feels like it's populated by interesting things to do, and to experience, and to see. It's great. And with all the player choice here, that reaffirms a sense and a desire for replayability, just to see what everything else you can do in the game is. There's so many things I want to try out. And even if I don't end up doing that, having that feeling makes my playthrough feel more special. Because it's my playthrough, no one else's. My choices, my consequences, my blunders, my successes. That's a great feeling to have. And it's so hard to translate a style like that into a video game form. But Larian have largely succeeded in that goal, in my opinion. At least with Act 1. I'll have to see about Act 2 and Act 3. I hear Act 3 is rather controversial, just based on the number of things they give you to do, but I don't think I'll mind that. So yeah, this little band of ours marches on, and let's see what Act 2 has in store for us at Moonrise Towers. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day. Leave a comment down below with your favorite event or favorite little story you have to tell from Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3. Whether you've played it or seen someone else play it, let me know. I'd love to hear your stories and to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.